I always talk about in some ways as if C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, they're the Old Testament version of what it is we want to do, which is we want to do something like what they did, but instead of being forced by culture or something to make it into a pagan story, like
Mhm.
no, let's make it into a Christian story.
Yeah.
Let's put it in that world without being a moralistic. It's about telling beautiful, great stories, not about moralizing or whatever. But why are we ashamed of our own
Yeah.
mythology? Like it's the most powerful one.
This is Jonathan Pedro. Welcome to the Symbolic World.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Matt Rhodes. I don't know if some of you know Matt. Matt is an artist. He's an illustrator, conceptual artist. He's worked on many of the franchises that you probably love, but he has also done several of independent projects where he kind of creates these insanely complex and beautiful worlds. And now he is working on a project called Dead Gods, which is a pre-Diluvian epic, crazy epic with all these different aspects of the Nephilim and the Watchers and all of this stuff. And so he's doing this on his YouTube channel. You see him drawing and kind of gives a process that he's developing, and he's getting more and more attention for it. And so I thought this is so perfect for us. And so I was definitely looking forward to talking to him. So Matt, thanks for coming on.
I'm very excited to be here. This is great. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a joy. And so a few years ago, people don't know this, I had actually reached out to Matt to just get some opinions about the God's Dog stuff we were doing, and he gave me some insights and some ideas about how to develop the world and how to kind of show the different things. So that was pretty cool. And then slowly I saw this Dead Gods thing coming up. So maybe tell us about what prompted this idea.
Sure. Well, the first thing was there's been more conversation just in all corners about this subject matter. I think people are just excited about this untapped area. And the more and more I saw that excitement, it lined up perfectly with a point where I was looking for a project to work on. I had created a story called Tellurian a few years ago, started in 2017, took like 3 years. It was this side project I was very passionate about, which is a wordless adventure story that's very loosely based on the armor of God in Ephesians 6. And I had so much fun doing that. There was a period of about a year afterwards where I was kind of just recovering almost
Mm.
from that project. But I knew I loved it so much, and I had gotten into the habit of just that weekly release and just wanting to create something new. So I knew I'm just gonna keep doing this from now on. And so I was trying to develop a project, and I had a few ideas that I was kind of cooking. But again, just culturally, there was just more and more talk about the pre-flood period that's untouched. We have some information, we can make inferences, and the more people talked about what that could have been, it was like that is just creative countryside that is vast and ready to be wandered through. And so that's really where I start. That's what kicked it off originally.
Yeah, and it's funny that there's only I mean, the only people that have really done this is I think Aronofsky's,
Yeah.
Noah, the comic book, first of all, and then the movie, but, it's like,
Well, and I I don't know where Aronofsky, excuse me, where Aronofsky, I don't know where he stands on his perspective of that material. You know, he had his own messages to send and all of that.
yeah.
One of the things I wanted to do was, like, I really admire Peter Jackson's approach to Lord of the Rings, where he said, "This
Mhm.
is Tolkien's story. So we're not going to do anything that gets in the way of Tolkien's story. We're going to tell his story." And that's kind of how I wanted to approach this. It's like I want to explore this creative territory, but from the author's perspective, like with respect to the author. And so my approach to it has been the term that I like to use is I'm coloring respectfully between the lines.
Mhm.
So there's huge gaps between lines. There's, there's pieces of information, but it's very like it's like an abridged history.
Yeah.
Um, but that abridged history implies so much, and there's been so much wild speculation over the years that my goal too, by I say color respectfully in the lines, I never want to go against the material, but I'm going to take the most visually interesting and over the top interpretation possible, whatever
All
leads
right.
to the most fun.
So I want to show the trailer
Yeah.
so people can get a sense of what it is we're talking about. Once you see it, people will just, it's really exciting. All right. So let's do this here.
The end of the world approaches. The shipwright's divinely inspired survival project nears completion. He and his loyal dragon-slaying companion are heading out on one last mission to brave the perilous antediluvian world and collect whatever important knowledge they can save to help the survivors kickstart civilization. This Bible-based project is intended to be a graphic novel, but I'm inviting you into the development process. Join me for weekly world-building videos where I'll be diving into the characters, technology, creatures, architecture, and cultures of the world before the cataclysm.
And so, yeah, so now people know what this is. It is obviously the pre-Diluvian world, but I mean, you are pushing it so hard, right? Um, and so, I mean, I just want to know, like, what are the threads that you're pulling on? Like, where are your inspirations coming from here?
Yeah, well, part of it is just that I wanted to create, uh, a story in a world where I had a lot of creative freedom, where I could come up with lots of cool stuff, and like I said, there are some clear fence posts, but there's so much territory inside those that, we have no idea what those cultures look like. We have no idea. We can make inferences by what came after, that it would have been, everything that came after the flood would have been kind of vaguely reminiscent of ideas, but it's a blank slate, really. And so the creative freedom there was a big one. But again, there's part of the joy for me is I love the creation of not just a story, but the world. I like, again, to reference Tolkien, his idea of being a sub-creator. That
Yeah.
God's a creator, we are sub-creators. And so the idea of creating a world is just really exciting. And there are really great markers that if you take each one as it stands and just play out the consequences. That's where the fun of world building comes from. One example would be, what do you do with Nephilim? These mighty men, the references to giants. I've said before,
You make them really big. I saw like
yeah,
one of
yeah.
them on your shoulder, like, oh man,
Well,
this.
yeah, this is if there's ever a chance to go bigger or crazier, I'm going to take it on this one, because I mean, ultimately, again, I say I'm doing this respectfully, but it is also, this stuff is fun, and
Yeah.
like, why not play with it? Like, it's meant.
Mm.
I think it's allowable to play with this material. But like the Nephilim, for example, there are very reasonable um, analyses and commenters talking about, okay, well, that really meant just well known or renowned or powerful. Like, there's very rational explanations for it, for why it would be normal. Just
Yeah, but no, not really. Because I mean,
uh,
look, let's be honest.
yeah,
You can't take the Genesis story on its own. So
yeah,
you have to be able to interpret Genesis in lieu of what happens when the Israelites come into the promised land. What happens when King
we were as
David is
grasshoppers.
when they're still kind of fighting off the Rephaim, and so, when they talked about Og's bed being, whatever, 15 feet or
Mhm.
something. And so there's all of these later stories in the Bible that are like reflecting back onto the story in Genesis.
And two, I've said a few times that I am taking the Bible is my primary text, but I am fully willing to look at anything secondary. Like, I'm drawing heavily on the book of Enoch, which, as a
Yeah, of
Protestant,
course.
that's not part of our. But yeah, but then also other things like other culture stories, other Greek myths,
Mhm.
Mesopotamian stories. Like, there is just it's kind of all fair game as supporting material, and so that's been really fun. But you take something like those, like the Nephilim. and you suddenly have to account for like, what would day-to-day life be living among
Giants.
giants? Like, you have to account for that. And
Yeah.
then you throw in the idea of the um, the 6-day creation story, which you have to account for all of these skeletons that we have, and then mythological stories about dragons, and all
Or
of a
so you have
sudden,
the dinosaurs there, like in the you have the dinosaurs as like animals in the
yeah,
world.
they're just
Yeah.
straight up animals in the world. And so now you have to think about like, how would humans survive in that kind of environment? Which, and this is part of the fun, is like, um, you have a civilization that has started. You have
Mhm.
from Adam and Eve, and they're growing and they're having their children, and the population is spreading across the earth. Then, in terms of technology, you know, necessity being the mother of invention, the amount that humanity would have to advance technologically, the things they would have to learn, you would be learning fast and hard.
Mhm.
And then when you add biblical pre-flood lifespans to it, you have people that are living
Forever.
7, 8, nine
Yeah, yeah.
hundred years. That's a level of expertise that rather than having to teach what you've learned to the next generation, you can do that and
In your own life.
continue to hone your craft and hone your craft. And that's one element that I'm particularly excited about is, as an artist, I've been doing this. I'm in my 40s. Um, I have seen artists in their 80s and they're incredible, and I'm looking forward to whatever I learn up until my 80s. But if you added centuries to that,
Yeah.
I think what an artist would be capable of would be something that would actually look like magic to us. Like, it would be something that you would believe was almost wizardry. Uh,
Yeah, especially if you can imagine that
yeah,
those prime years would be longer,
yeah,
right? 'Cause a lot of people, like, they have their kind of peak, and then, then there's like a decline as you get older, and
exactly.
you imagine if, like, that peak would last 300 years, like, even if it's just, like, proportionally the amount
Yeah.
of, like, peak that it would last in a human person. I mean, that's right, that you would create types of wisdom and knowledge that we can't even imagine.
Which then I think is a really great explanation for, in some cases, some of the god archetypes that have
Mm,
grown. Where one of my videos is about Jubal Cain, for example, and it's like, okay, a human that invented instruments, but then is playing and perfecting those instruments for centuries. I almost think that there would be something that humans are God creating machines, basically, or like, we're built to worship. And so
yeah.
in lieu of worshiping God, we'll find anything to worship. And if you can find the guy who is so good at music, he can almost control people's minds or make people fall asleep or whatever. It's like, that's as good as a God as, anything else you could hope for. So it's kind of exploring the idea of where the seeds for some of these ideas are.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
some ways. So, and that's been fun. But then, those are just a couple pillars. You throw a few of those in, and then you just imagine what happens when they bump into each other, and
Right.
how do they conflict with each other or work together, or and it just starts to grow and grow and grow, and it's frankly, it's becoming bigger than I thought it would as far as like something to handle. Like, it's a lot, but it's an endless playground.
I'm here with Deacon Seraphim and want to tell you about the new Universal History Masterclass. We've been doing these Universal Histories for like years now, and so Deacon Seraphim is going to pull it all together into a beautiful Masterclass version. So tell us a little bit why anyone would want to do this, Deacon Seraphim.
One of the things that I'm asked the most by people who, at conferences like the one we're at today, one of the things that I'm asked the most is, could you give me a reading list? Where can I find more about these things? What primary sources are you using? Things like this. And you can kind of find all of that stuff in our videos, but there's like 4 years of videos now. And so what we're going to do is gather all of that stuff into one place, as well as a bunch of new stuff that you guys haven't heard because it's just actually too detailed for the podcast, and there's just kind of no way to get to it. It's going to be 6 weeks, theoretically 2-hour classes each week. I think it's going to be something more like probably 3 or 4 hours. We'll just see how it goes. I'm just sort of bracing myself for defeat now in that regard. But it's going to be Wednesdays at 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, starting August the 5th through September the 9th. Come and join us if you really want to understand your story, the story of civilization, the story of Christianity, the story of your people, your tribe, your family, even the city that you live in, even if you live, in America today. This course is going to help you do that. We're gonna lay everything out. We're gonna bring all the receipts. We're gonna get deep into things, and then we're also gonna step back each week and look at how this pattern, actually teaches us how to deal with the things that we're encountering in our country today. So please join us.
Yeah, there's no reason to be a wanderer anymore. We have the road, and Deacon Seraphim is going to lead us down it. So come join us. All right, so give us some, like, not spoilers, but tell us who's in it. Like, which
Sure.
characters from the Bible are you gonna have in the story?
Well, I'm particularly excited to hit all the named ones from before the flood. So,
Is are Adam and Eve going to be in the story?
well, okay, so
You could do it because
I could.
they die kind of
It's
late, you
pretty
know?
close.
Yeah.
I'm specifically setting the main story in the last maybe couple of years before the
Right,
flood.
right.
So the arc is nearing its completion.
All right, so
Uh,
then Adam at this point, no Adam.
there wouldn't be an
Eve, it
Adam.
doesn't say when Eve dies though.
That's true.
This is something that Neil Gaiman picked up, which is that
Mhm.
it doesn't say that it doesn't tell us when Eve died, so you can imagine that maybe she lived, you know.
It might have. It might have. So yeah, I like. Well, actually, here I'll give your audience a preview to something that I haven't actually talked about yet,
All
even
right.
with
All
my
right.
patrons. So sorry, guys. But they get to hear it here. Already I'm thinking ahead to Adam and Eve. There being stories that Noah remembers
Mm,
him sitting around a fire with like six of his patriarchs, like his father, his grandfather, his great grandfather, and they're all able to tell him secondhand stories of their time with Adam.
mm.
And so that idea of continuity, that the
Yeah, yeah.
story that Adam had in the garden and everything after the fall, that would have been given and passed down face to face through generations, and then that directly into Noah. I like the idea of presenting the Adam and Eve story as one of Noah, the shipwright's stops on this final mission is to end up at what is effectively Mount Olympus, or like first home. And
Uh,
it's where Adam and Eve began began civilization. And when he finds it, it's a ruined city.
uh,
It's been abandoned. Most people have gone out elsewhere. And so what he's exploring is even just some of even like the first throne, because
uh,
it's so in a lot of representations of Adam and Eve, we see their fall, and then we see them wearing fur and doing like subsistence farming in the dirt, because that would have been the first stage. It's like very hard. But after centuries, with building a family that is now a civilization, that makes you royalty. Like at a certain point, Adam is no longer planting seeds. He's he would be elevated to a level that is like almost like the model or the archetype of king.
yeah.
And so being able to show what the first kingdom would have been in its height, and then it's been abandoned by people because they don't want the reminder of what that was, of what the first forms of worship were. Um,
Mm.
of like they've branched out and have found all sorts of other things to worship, and so it's kind of a ghost town.
Mhm. That's super interesting. And so yeah, and so there is definitely, are you gonna have, like, 2 lines, like a kind of Cain line and a Seth line, like, in competition, or you're gonna do that kind of stuff?
I think that will be definitely like an undercurrent throughout. Because again, like to other named characters, I mentioned Jubal Cain.
Yeah.
I did a video about Tubal Cain as well, the first blacksmith. Um, and I think that showing where these different lines have gone, Lamech as well is going to be. I've got some plans for him that I think will be kind of unhinged, but
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
obviously, because that's one little verse.
Mhm.
The tradition that's the most accepted is that he kills Cain, like, accidentally. If
Mm.
you know that story where he's blind.
Yeah.
This is, like, the legend, and then his son, uh, directs him with the bow. He's like, "Shoot here, dad," and then he shoots Cain, and he killed his own son. That's
Yeah.
like the story. But I mean, obviously that's one of the legends, but you could do it differently.
I
But it's
like that.
definitely an interesting one. Yeah.
I would also like to do. I've got some sketches for Methuselah, historical, because he's the oldest recorded. He has the oldest recorded age.
Yeah.
A lot of the representations of him have him as like a hunched over old man with the longest white beard out of everybody. But I would the direction I'm taking is much more, think Anthony Hopkins in Zorro, where it's like he was the first Zorro.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
whereas Noah in this story is kind of like a samurai Conan sort of figure, Methuselah was the one that was doing it first. And
Right,
yeah,
right, right. So that's the relationship, let's say. It's kinda
yeah.
like, "Okay, Junior," you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Where it's like, if you show up and the shipwright's there, Noah, that's bad. If Methuselah shows up, that's drop everything and run. Like, yeah,
Well, man, that's great stuff. I'm definitely I mean, I'm kind of following from afar. I don't have time to
uh
watch all of the videos, but I've definitely been excited to do it. So how far are you, like, in terms of the actual story you wanna tell? Because I see a lot of word building and, like,
yeah,
just going into all of these aspects, and so how far are you in terms of the story that you wanted, and what is it gonna look like? Is it gonna be
yeah.
one book? Is it gonna be several books? And what is it gonna be like?
Well, I'll tell you the plan now. First of all, for the first year, I spent entirely in world building. This was just, what is this place? Because I didn't want to start and then kind of stumble upon things that I wish I had figured out early. So this is, I didn't want to write myself in any corners. So I spent the first year just world building. That's what most of the videos are about. Um, but world building can also be a trap. You can world build endlessly and just get stuck there, and then you'll never get out. So I drew a hard line for myself. I started actually drawing comic pages,
Okay.
and so the intent is for it to be a, graphic novel, comic, whatever term you want to use. Uh, with Tellurian, that was one big continuous story, and I had no idea how long it would take. It ended up taking me 3.5 years, well, three and a quarter years. This time around, I'm purposefully doing something more episodic so that I can tell a short story, get a new idea, get inspired, follow that for a while, move over, tell another story, do flashback, whatever. It's a little bit more open. And so the intention there is, I would like to release it incrementally as books. So once
Mm.
I have whatever number of pages is enough, I'll make book one available, and then I'll start on book two, and then I'll just keep going until it's done. I don't
Till
really
the
have any
flood. Till
plans.
the until the flood. I do
Yeah,
do I'm gonna end with the flood, or are you gonna
that's yeah. So,
are you gonna end with, like, the founding of a new world?
well,
Like,
this is
what's the
yeah. This is the thing
I mean,
that's
I
kind
probably
of
shouldn't ask you to spoil it for us, but, like,
no.
just a basic idea.
Well, okay. One of the things that I'm as a someone who likes to tell stories, I have seen the horrible outcomes that happen when you have not planned your ending.
Yeah.
So I will never start something unless I know how it will end. With Tellurian, that was what I did. I had the whole thing outlined. I knew where it was going, so then I could draw the first image. Um, with Dead Gods, thankfully, the ending is known. It's a known quantity. It has some pretty obvious outcomes. But yeah, my current plan, and I'm open to this changing over time, but my current plan is that the flood would be kind of the big crescendo of the book, and it would end with Noah and his family on the ark, and that would we would it would be probably have to be its own book altogether, just to
Mm.
show the destruction. Um, because I'll already, I've touched on these characters. I haven't even begun to tell their stories, but one of the things that's always in my mind is all of their hubris, all of their pride, all of their whatever they're trying to get away with. We're going to see the unbelievably violent comeuppance at the end, no matter what. And I'm going to want to spend time on familiar characters and showing, what happens. I mean, you
Yeah.
can imagine, for example, Poseidon, the Nephilim king of Atlantis, who is like, the ocean's mine.
Yeah.
This is my territory. Um, Standing there peeing himself as he watches a 500-foot tidal wave filled with debris come to grind his entire empire into the dirt, and everyone's looking at him like, "What do we do?" And he's like, "I
There's
die.
nothing.
There's nothing." So it's thinking about that will be a lot of fun. Um, I'll hint again. In the next episode that I'm working on, it starts with a dream sequence. So it's one of the dreams that the shipwright has been having for the last 100 years, which is just glimpses of the flood.
Yeah.
And so it will be kind of throughout, I'll be kind of hinting at what the level of destruction will be, because I want to go farther than I've ever seen with it. Um, we'll see.
There's that one comic series. Oh, what was it called? It's horrid. It's called The Damned, I think, or it's basically the story of the world after the fall and the Cainites and their well, it's not the Cainites, actually Cain is a hero and it's like a horrible thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
You
know the
seen
one you
that?
mean. Yes,
You seen that
I have.
series? And one of the problems, like actually one of the problems with the flood story, and I'm wondering how you're gonna do this, is how do you tell the story without us in some ways ultimately feeling more sorry for the people that are flooded, obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
than Noah, because when you read it in the text, everything's so short, so you don't really it's so short that you can make it into a children's story. You can have arcs,
Yeah.
little children playing with arcs, but when you know what it is, it's so dramatic, that it's hard to narratively, to me, it's hard to imagine telling that in a convincing way. And in that one, the damned one, I forget again the name of the book. I mean, they're so perverted. Like
Yeah.
it goes so far in showing how degenerate and perverted they are that you want them to be eliminated. But it's also really hard to read because it's so perverted that
Yeah.
you're like, okay, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
am I soiling myself with this?
Yeah. Well, that's one thing people have different aspects of these stories that they want to tell. For me, I'm intentionally trying not to wallow in
Yeah, that's right.
that.
That's what I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
also that problem.
But when it comes to how to handle that, like this is part of respectfully coloring between the lines, is that,
Mm,
humans always have this massive spectrum of responses to things. And one example would be, I'm putting forward that I needed to have a background for Noah, for the shipwright. And there are so many shepherds that are elevated throughout the Bible that I felt it was safe to kind of borrow that and
mm.
say, okay, if Noah is a shepherd, great, that's what he was. But this is again the heir of a continuous kingdom for centuries, and the head of this household. Again, that's a king. That's not just, oh, I have some sheep in a field. That's no,
Yeah, it's
here's
like a
my
shepherd
castle and
king,
the
yeah.
valley that we protect and my town and the people that are all supported by this. And
They're
and
all
they
gonna die, man.
well, this
That's
and this is the thing. And so one of the things that I plan on showing kind of
yeah.
periodically through characters that he meets throughout the world, it's all people that used to be a part of his kingdom.
Mm,
And there's a spectrum of responses where some people were just like, "I think you're a lunatic. I hate you for destroying a good life that I had,
mm.
and I hope you choke on whatever your God has in store for you."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then there's other people who are like, "Listen, I love you. You gave me a home when no one else would. Um, I was with you to the end, but I have a family to support. And I was a shepherd, or I was a soldier, or I was something, and that went away when you pursued this mission. Like all that whole economy that we depended on was vanished for you to build this thing that we don't understand. And he didn't give us the vision,
Mm.
and I trust you to a point, but eventually the gold runs out, and my family doesn't like. I need to provide for them. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
very from the fully rejected to the actually really understandable, like, that's reasonable and might be a choice that I would make. Um, just to show just how extreme the level of faith that Noah had to have, where,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
everybody had given up on him, and a lot of the reasons were pretty darn reasonable.
They're reasonable. Like, if you imagine it today, it'd be pretty reasonable to
Yeah.
imagine why you wouldn't follow some guy who says, "The world's gonna end, I'm gonna build a ship,"
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and partially too, this is why I really love the character of Nama, his wife, and why I want her to be, especially through flashbacks, but just to reveal what an incredible woman she is, because it's like in her particular case, like, yes, she's married to him, so she's going with him, but the fact that she's ride or die. It's like, this is
Mm,
scary. I've lost everything. I was a queen, and now I'm collecting food for storage and, weaving ropes.
mm.
Like, but just to show that, like, it's like, "Yeah, this is hard, but I'm with you."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the kinda courage that shows. So, it's there's a lot of opportunities to get a little bit more into like the human side of how you respond to something this crazy.
And are you following the tradition? Because obviously in the text it doesn't say that her name is Nama. This
Yeah,
just comes from tradition. But do you follow the tradition that she's Tubal Cain's sister?
I haven't decided yet. I don't think I don't know if it's something that I would underline or draw attention to. It could be. It would be. I mean, if anything, it might just opportunities like that are cool. Where if the shipwright ends up in the face of Tubal Cain, and for him to say, "Brother," like
Yeah, yeah.
have those moments where people who know the backstory are like, "Oh, cool, that's neat," but it may not factor into like what the actual narrative
Yeah, if
is.
you can make it fit. In God's Dog, I don't wanna spoil our things, but in God's Dog, we make it like a important part of the narrative. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately, the fact that she is Tubal Cain's sister actually becomes part of how the curse kinda continues after the after
Mhm,
the after the fall, you know?
mhm.
Sorry, I probably am spoiling this. But anyway, that to me, it's really exciting to see how people take these on because I
Mhm.
think, when I saw that you were taking this on, I'm like, yeah, we need more people to dive into that time and to be able to tell these stories because there's so much, like you said, there's so much potential, and it's just something that no one has touched for some
Yeah,
reason. But maybe it's because we feel like that what Saint Peter told us that the day will come when that will be like in the time of Noah, that we kind of feel like possibly this is where we are now.
yeah. I think too, there's an element of, yeah, I've heard this rumbled around in various places, but there is kind of a re-enchantment taking
Yeah.
place, and as the institutions that we grew up with are starting to crumble, it's almost like this cage that's been built around us is starting to crack, and people are kind of peering out through the cracks and saying,
Yeah.
I think there might be a little bit more to this. What's going on? And the more you do that, the more you think, well, wait a second, we discarded this. What if we just kind of pulled that back and took it? Let's just take another look.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's definitely right. I think that that's right. And that's why, like you said, in some ways, the idea especially of the Nephilim is so present. Like
Yeah.
it's everyone, even non-Christians, Joe Rogan type
Mhm.
people, they're obsessed with these
Yeah.
ideas and they interpret it in all kinds of weird, wild ways. But there's nonetheless this sense, the growing sense that there are something like the Watchers, or that there are some types of intelligences that
Yeah.
are acting on us, or that are trying to subvert us, or that are trying to like come back into the world Sauron style, like find bodies, and so I think that that's going to be interesting. I mean, are you going to portray the spirits? Like, are you going to have a way of portraying the angels and the heavenly realm?
Okay. Well, yeah. Let's. I'm really excited about it because I think this is one of the more interesting, unhinged territories of this project. Um, just looking at a bunch of sources, trying to figure out what's kind of established, what do we know, what can we infer. What I'm looking at is like the Watchers were fallen angels
Mhm.
given the earth as a kind of territory. Like your job is to oversee creation in some form or another. Um, they get bent, uh, and get set. They're set against the creator, and so they create offspring, the Nephilim. Um, Nephilim are half human, half fallen angel, and I think one of the I'm implying that one of the things that they inherit from their fathers is that bound to the earth nature, that
Mhm.
like there is no heaven for these creatures, that like this is your place until the end, and then we've got another place prepared for you and you're not going to like it. um so
Well,
in
that's
this
definitely like the one of the main like in the intertestamentary time, like during the
Mhm.
Second Temple time, the tradition that the demons were actually the spirits of the Nephilim, like, was pretty established. It
and that
wasn't.
and that's what I'm building this off of. So
Oh, yeah.
our understanding of demons are these creatures that are left over, that were ascendant, they had global domination in the physical. Like they were the supreme lords of the earth, as far as people were concerned. And now they're not. Now they have to operate differently. And so a lot of what I'm saying, what I'm exploring is the idea that even dragons, for example, I make a distinction between dinosaurs and dragons. There's the animal, but then there's what happens when a Nephilim spirit, that body dies, but the spirit is still stuck on that earth and needs a body, and so takes takes a dinosaur. And at that point, you have literally everything you need for the classic archetypal dragon, which is a giant reptile that has the ability to reason and think, that would know to collect treasure because they know that they lure people to them rather than having to go hunt them. Like, it gives you all of those hallmarks by just
I know.
combining those two pieces.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Oh man, I'm definitely this has definitely been a project that I'm really excited about. And I want people to be able to check it out. Where's the best place for people to find what you're doing and to see it?
Yeah, so right now, my YouTube channel is probably the best place if you want to get into this project. It's you can find that through my website, which is just mattrhodesart.com, or you can just type my name and Dead Gods into YouTube. It should show up. And there, it's just the whole series from beginning to end. You can pick whichever ones are your favorites, or some people, it's cool, have been telling me they've just worked through the whole series in the background while they're working on their own projects. Which, however you want to do it.
And it's really, I mean, it's really cool, obviously, to see you draw because it's humbling too. It's
Well,
very
thank you.
humbling. And so it's really fun to see how you move things around,
Yeah.
and it also just the facility you have with the pen, and you've really mastered your
Mm.
art, and that's always such a joy to see someone who's really mastered their art. So it's great to see
I
that as
appreciate it.
well.
Well, it does help too in this day and age. It seems over the years it's been shown that people kind of like to see behind the scene. They like to see the process. Um,
Well,
and
in the age of AI, this is the future. What you're doing, you're
yeah,
literally tracing the future for artists, is to say, okay, so we have all this AI stuff that can do kind of facsimiles of what it is that we care about,
uh,
but by showing the process and showing everything you're doing, you're rehumanizing the artistic process, and you're helping people kind of feel like they're part of the human aspect of
uh,
this culture creation. So I think you're definitely on the right track on that
yeah.
in that way. Yeah.
Thankfully, I've only had one person accuse me of using AI on one of my videos, and it was kind of like, okay, if you can show me the AI that can create a 12-minute process video from beginning to end, like I'd like to see that. That would be impressive at
Yeah.
this point.
But also the thing is that we recognize the AI art. I don't care, I mean, maybe you're tricked once in a while,
Yeah.
but if you have something that lasts a little longer, like if you
Mhm.
have images that a few more images, you can really see that it's AI, and especially because a lot of the AI art, how can I say this? Like, it's actually derivative of something else, right? And so if you're looking at what you're doing, like, you can tell that it's not derivative of something else.
Uh-huh.
So someone could take your work and then maybe feed it into AI and then try to
Yeah.
create some derivative stuff. But there's no way that what you're doing is that, because it doesn't feel derivative of anything else.
I just as an experiment, I did try running some of my ideas through various image generating things. And it kind of proved to me what I've suspected and known for a while, is that AI is very good at finding the middle. So it's like, take 50 artists and find the one thing that all of them would maybe agree on, and it'll give you that and
Yeah.
almost nothing outside of it. But its one advantage is that, and kind of why it's been able to, I'll just say, trick people into thinking it's
Mhm.
more impressive than it actually is. It's not good at design. It's not good at it's not good at surprising you with something thoughtful or interesting because it's an averaging machine.
Yeah.
What it's good at is rendering. So it can make something that looks very finished, but it doesn't have intention behind it.
Yeah.
And you can see from my stuff, it's line work and flat color. Like, I'm working in a way that's almost like traditional animation. Um, I would way rather have a thought personally, I would way rather have a thoughtful design that is rendered simply than a very, very, very polished thing that looks super finished and expensive that doesn't really have much thought behind it at all.
Yeah, yeah, that lacks that edge. I imagine if you take your drawings and you put them in AI and you say something like, "Make a kind of movie image version of it," it could probably do, like you said, a pretty decent job at interpreting it. But like you said, that's downstream from what it is that you're doing anyways.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to keep following this, and we can't
Thank you.
wait. And do you have like, are you giving yourself some kind of a timeline? Are you giving yourself some kind of a?
With this one, no. I honestly, I'm having so much fun with it now that if it grows and people are still enjoying it, then I'll just find ways to. The amount of stories that I already have just made notes for or sketches, like the places for him to go, the myths to cover, all of that stuff. I really could be working on this until I die.
Wow.
And if that's how this turns out, great. I'll do that. That'll be fun. If
And are you
after
still doing other projects, or this has become the main thing you're doing?
this is still a side project. Like, this is
Yeah,
still
yeah,
something
yeah.
I'm
You
working
still
on
have
my spare
your
time.
day job. You're still
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
whatever design work for, like, yeah.
So that's something too. If, my capacity right now is I get maybe 10 hours a week to put into this. One day, if it grows and becomes something that can sustain itself, then it gets 60 hours a week, and then we're off to the races, and we'll see how it goes.
So
But
what
yeah.
we're saying here is we need people to go on Patreon, and if you want to see this
Yes.
happen, go on Patreon, kind of, make it possible for Matt not to work for all the big media companies, but to be really
Exactly.
focused on telling the story of the end of a world in a way that no one's ever done. So that's
Well, and speaking to someone else who's an independent creator, as the institutions are starting to kind of crumble, the old guard is not
mm,
able to move like it used to. Um, I think it's starting to become a time for more people to find the stuff that they're passionate about, that they care about, or the stories that actually speak to them, and just support those. And yeah, that's me too. I'm saying, if you like my story, please, sign up on Patreon. That'd be awesome. But more and more, I've been looking at independent projects that I like and saying,
yeah,
why don't I give them my money instead? And then
yeah,
we
I
build our
totally
own communities. We build our own, we'll build our own culture. That's fine. It'll be cool.
I think that's exactly right. I think that this is the future, not just the approach that you're taking is definitely the future, but also this kind of story. I mean, obviously that's what we want to do with God's Dog, is to say, in the Bible and in our Christian tradition, we have so much that's been untouched
Yep.
in terms of telling fictional stories within that worldview. I always talk about in some ways as if C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, they're the Old Testament version of what it is we want to do, which is we want to do something like what they did, but instead of being forced by culture or something to make it into a pagan story, like,
Mhm.
no, let's make it into a Christian story.
Yeah.
Let's put it in that world without being a moralistic. It's about telling beautiful, great stories, not about moralizing or whatever. But why are we ashamed of our own
Yeah.
mythology? Like, it's the most powerful one.
Well, and that's something too that's kind of important to me on this one is, um, I'm not some brilliant writer or storyteller. I'm literally learning how to do this as I go, and people get to watch me stumble as I figure it out. Um, but I like adventure stories. And my goal is to tell a really fun adventure story. Like, literally, my elevator pitch would be, "What if Noah was Conan?" That's it. And it's like, it's not going to be high art. It's not going to be remembered as a great, massive thing, but it's fun, and it's for the 13-year-old kid in me that used to love this kind of stuff. And I think that's fine. Like C.S. Lewis's quote, I think it was him, of what the world needs is not more Christian authors, but more authors who are also Christian. And
Mm,
it's like, I'm not really planning on moralizing so much. I want to watch Noah, kill dragons and fight giants, um, with the underlying respect to the morality that's built into the story.
of course, of course. All right, this is great. So everybody, go check it out. We'll put all the links also in the description if you kind of missed it, and we'll be following very closely, and can't wait to see this kind of land in some kind of book, some kind of story.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for everything you're doing, Matt.